Hi.
Hi. Are we both a little bit nervous?
I'm super nervous.
Okay, but then we'll start on something that you're going to have full and total recall for, hopefully. Your childhood. Let's start at the beginning. And the reason why, Rebel actually said to me, please don't do a long chronological talk. But I was like, how do I do a 23-year career without some kind of structure? So we're going to have to start at the beginning. Let's talk about the influence that you claim you've had from your parents. So your parents were in an experimental theatre group called Shazarade.
Sherazad.
Okay, I can't say it.
It's the lady that tell all the stories in 1001 Night.
Okay, it's a Persian thing, right? So my pronunciation might have been right.
That's fine.
That was the Swedish version. Tell me about going on tour with your parents, because you were on the road with them pretty much constantly as a child, right?
Yeah, we were touring from when I was 6 months till I started school.
6 months old?
Yes. And it was a group that my parents started in, I think, 76, so 3 years before I was born. And it was them and their friends from, university. So I was touring with my parents and 12 other human beings. They were all quite childish and lovely actors.
In a minibus? In a coach?
Yeah, the first bus we had was a Volkswagen hippie thing. And then we got a few other bigger vehicles later on. And they did experimental theater, kind of bordering onto modern dance. They were very inspired by the Russian culture of theater that came out of the communistic era. But they weren't making political theater, which was at the time something that everyone else was doing. They were doing more theater about the human condition and about the problems with communism as well.
But it was quite experimental, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You've told me, is anyone here from Stockholm, from Sweden? There's a few Stockholmers in the back. So you've told me, as we've walked through Stockholm before, you've pointed to the town square and said, this is a weird memory for me. Like the car crash piece?
Yeah.
So could you explain that?
Oh, that's great, you remember that. So it was in the beginning of the 80s, and my parents had made this happening thing, and it involved 2 long, Cadillacs driving down a ramp on one of the biggest squares in Stockholm. And my mom and 4 other female actors dressed up, and it was like a slow motion crash. So they were all hit by the cars, and they all died. And it started with my godfather driving this Cadillac. He was a pimp, and he had a tiger in the car, which was one of the other actors, and then a little gray man with a portfolio walking around the square. And the whole thing ended with this gray man just transforming into this amazing female creature on stilts. And it was all accompanied by experimental synth music.
Okay.
And yeah, and I was on the shoulders of my dad. And also at the same time, there were the first maybe racist demonstrations happening at the same time. There were clashes between, I guess, Nazis and hippies in the center of Stockholm. So it was kind of intense energy. It was one of the stronger memories that I had from hanging out with my parents.
But I remember thinking it was quite indicative, because whenever we're in Sweden, I feel like we end up talking about the reminiscences of your childhood and spaces that you moved through, and you'll say, I remember when this happened here, or I used to go to a club there. And it seems that kind of experimental culture and your parents' friends sort of had an impact on you. You know, that style interview that you did for Swedish radio, you were saying just the sense of costumes and performance, you realized later in your life that it had a really profound influence on you.
Yes. I'm so happy you're making this interview, Adam. It feels very safe. Okay, so yeah, it had a huge influence on me, of course, because so my grandfather was a priest, and after daycare or school, I would be alone with my grandparents, and I would come with him to church, and I would, watch him preach. And then my mom would pick me up and take me to the theater, and there was another costume and another kind of preaching going on. And so this environment with like both very serious and spiritual things, but also my mom, playing witches and prostitutes, and of course was, it shaped me. It shaped me.
I guess, like, in a way, you've seen the performativeness of the church, then you've seen the performativeness of your parents' theatre practice. At what point did music come into that, and like pop music, for example? Because I know that you said that you were kind of like, at first, very much influenced by what your parents were listening to. Yeah.
A lot of the music that I loved as a child were things that I listened to in the tour bus, and it was everything from what my mom listened to, which was a lot of Aretha Franklin and Jimi Hendrix, but then also like other things that the other actors were listening to. And one of the first memories I have was Hero with David Bowie on headphones, driving on some road somewhere in Europe. It was my way of like making time pass by. It was boring being in a tour bus with grown-ups, no one to play with. But also that, most people that were in the theater group, they loved music, and it was like a big part of our everyday lives.
Because you have younger siblings, but your younger siblings weren't on the road with you.
No, I think when my parents got pregnant with my brother, they realized that there's some great things about, bringing me on the road, and there's some less great things.
Like, one kid on the road is fine, 2 kids on the road is...
Yeah, I think they wanted to give him a more stable upbringing. And so we moved back to Stockholm when I was 7, and I started school when my brother was born. So him and I have very different experiences of my parents.
And then you started writing songs at 11. There seems to have been one key event that was inspiring to you in terms of the lyrical content of these songs. What would that be?
My parents' divorce. Yeah. Yeah, it's a huge thing for a kid when your parents decide to split up or, separate in some way. And because we had been touring, my whole childhood, and they were always working together, it was a big kind of separation, and it wasn't a good one either. And so that was the first song I wrote was called In My Heart, and it was about my parents' divorce. Yeah.
So I actually have some of the lyrics for In My Heart. I showed them to you at the weekend, and we decided we weren't going to broadcast those. But this is a kind of great story. So Robyn was discovered, and correct me on any details here, in a school assembly in 1993-ish?
Yeah.
So there's this group called Legacy of Sound in Sweden, and they were invited to Robyn's school to do a performance, and they wanted one of the kids at the school to do a number or a something after the band had performed, and they picked Robyn. And I've asked you about this, but what's also funny is that the Swedish pop star directly responsible for then getting Robyn signed to BMG sent me an email and told me about this childhood,
Wow.
this memory of you at the school assembly. Let me read you some of it, and I'll show you the rest afterwards, but it's really sweet. This is from Maya, from Legacy of Sound. She says, after our show was done, I walk off stage, and after that, this young blonde girl walks up on the stage with what I remember was a backing track cassette tape. She presented herself and her song, and it really grabbed a hold of me. Her voice, her stage presence, and her being totally comfortable and confident on stage. She was 14 or so, and to me, born to do this. I walked up to her to talk, asked her what her dreams were. Did she want to sing professionally, or would she want to pursue a career? I asked for her number and called her, spoke to her mother, and I decided I wanted to introduce her to the team I was working with in the studio at the time. I remember bringing Robyn down to Peter. She was just super cool, and at the meeting I asked if Robyn would feel like singing just a song a cappella for Peter. She sang, as always, her heart out. I guess the rest is history. I've followed her career ever since, and she is to me one of the greatest female artists we have. Solid, heartfelt, witty, sure of herself and where she wants to go, and a brilliant songwriter. I have often wondered, though, because we lost contact when she signed to BMG, of how those early years affected her. I mean, she was only 14 in a music business full of sharks. It cannot have been easy starting that early, and I hope that she had a good comfort of the people around her. We see each other every once in a while, and it always warms my heart. I'm a huge fan and have been since day one. Oh.
That's very, very sweet. She's a very sweet person.
And do you remember that? Do you remember singing this song in the school assembly?
I do. And I feel bad for her, feeling bad for like putting me in the record. I mean, I don't know if that's what she meant.
I don't think she feels bad. I think it's something that you've mentioned, which is that it was a very young age to enter into an old-fashioned music business as well.
Yeah, it was nothing like what it is today. It was not fractured. It was not multicultural. It was, you know, a very old-school industry. And I'm so happy that I decided to start my own record company eventually.
Yeah.
But those first 10 years were really important and very informative, but really difficult as well. I never felt like I fitted in. I mean, imagine going from that kind of, you know, thing with my parents into a much more conservative and very old school way of working. I was so naive, you know, when I came here to this city the first time when I started working on that first album. I just thought, yeah, you know, we'll tour, I'll play some music for people. You know, I thought it was going to be like with my parents. No.
Well, you're not in a Volkswagen bus on the back roads of Sweden anymore.
No tigers.
But I mean, even in Sweden, because this is me still looking at the very formative years that you had there, you were opening for Tina Turner in Sweden. How was that? Like, do you remember that?
Nerve-wracking. I mean, I was so little and I didn't know my voice, and I was super nervous. But amazing to meet her. It was one of my mom's like big idols, and I remember meeting her before, and she was like, "Well, hi, Robyn. I heard you've got quite a voice." And I'm like, "What?" What? And that was mind-blowing, of course, yeah.
Let's play one of these formative, inspirational artists, and we'll come back to Robyn's rapping later in the lecture, but this was one of your influences and someone that you've gone on to make music with. Let's play Man-Child by Nena Cherry, please. So that was Man-Child, the video by Nena Cherry. Who was the baby?
I'm not sure, but I believe it's Tyson, her second child.
Shout out to Tyson.
Shout out to Tyson. And shout out to Nena for being the first, what I know at least, female in pop music to be pregnant and have a baby in the video. It's like she did it in, what's this, 85? 80? I don't know, 87 maybe. Yep.
I want to talk about, again, the beginnings of your Scandinavian career, just before you came to America. So you end up writing some of these big first songs with Max Martin. And this is the same year that he's writing Everybody and I Want It That Way for the Backstreet Boys. Like, this is like his big moment on the scene. How was that? Do you remember working with him and Dennis?
I do. I had finished most of my first album, and Peter, who was my manager at the time, said that he thought I should work with this guy, Martin Sandberg.
Because how old would he have been at the time?
How old could he have been? I mean, 25?
But they were young, weren't they?
They were young. He was really young. Dennis was a little bit older, but Martin was his protege, and Martin had been, I remember being told later on how Dennis had been, kind of putting him in a basement and just have him write a bunch of songs that were all of those amazing things that came out later. And the first time I met them both, I was late, and I was really nervous. And they kind of froze me out. They were quiet for they didn't talk to me for a minute, and I got super nervous. It was quite traumatizing. But then when we got over that, they were super friendly. But it was kind of a hard duty kind of environment for me to come in.
Because Max Martin comes from heavy metal as well.
Heavy metal, like suburb kid. But one of the most generous people that I've worked with. I have to say that. He's so, always from that time up until, when we worked later, the most generous and open person.
Because you came back to work with him on Time Machine.
Yeah.
Years later. It's funny. And you even took me to visit the Max Martin mansion in Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
Where there's a minion working in every room. Write a song, write a song, write a song.
Yeah. They're professionals.
I mean, good minions.
Yeah.
It's on a time delay, we're okay. So then you come to America, and what's crazy about America is that we found footage on YouTube of your 18th birthday party here in New York. How does an 18-year-old get in a club in New York? That shouldn't even be allowed. But they were there pouring cocktails, and Andy Bell from Erasure's there.
It was something that the record company did. I guess it was the social media of that time. There wasn't an Instagram. You had to film things and show them to people and send it to MTV. There was no email. I remember when I came here the first time, I had email, but most people didn't, So when you met someone, you were like, are you on the internet? Do you have email? That's how you...
You'd be like, here's my Instagram. It comes on a VHS cassette.
Exactly. No, it's true.
And you even... In that press kit, there's also footage of you backstage at the Apollo, which I find crazy.
Yeah, me too.
You did, not so much that you did it, but that must be nerve-wracking as hell. Live at the Apollo, you don't think it was a talent show, but you performed there. And then more footage that we found, and we're not going to show today, but maybe you'll be able to find it on the internet. Robyn was also one of the very few non-black artists to perform on Soul Train. Twice. And we watched that footage this weekend.
Oh my God.
I mean, this stuff just must have been so nerve-wracking.
It was. It still is in a way. I mean, I think to have your first, your teenage years documented like that is kind of crazy. And I'm still when I think about it, I want to go back to myself when I was 16, 17 and be like, hey, girl, you're going to be okay, Because it was kind of tough. And I can't believe how brave I was and all the things I did. I mean, it's bordering on just stupid, no, not stupid, but very just throwing myself out there in things I didn't know that much about. But I learned along the way.
Because when I've spoken to your brother and he said, you have to remember, Robyn left home as a teenager. You became fully independent, that's a bold thing to do. Leave school at 16, just be like, I'm out here, I'm an adult. And in a particularly crazy music industry as well. Because you also reminded me that this was the era when lots of musicians would do talk shows together, and it's you were backstage with Destiny's Child, or you were on the same show as a huge girl group at the time. But you're just you on your own from Sweden. No, it's brave. It's amazing.
It is great. And, how lucky am I to be able to still doing it? I mean, it's luck, and it's a certain kind of, chain of events also, and you meet some really good people along the way, and yeah.
Let's talk about how this era of your career, this was also interesting talking to you about your albums. And I said to Robyn, when you say album 1 and 2, do you mean Robyn Is Here? Do you mean that as album 1? Or I'm getting the feeling that you think of Robyn as your first album. And you said that in a way you do. Like now you think of Robyn as your first album, Body Talk as your second album. So let's talk about how you've moved from the early 3 albums and the kind of influences that you had in those to then Robyn, album 4, album 1, and starting your own label. Like, what was it that made you think, to hell with this, I don't need a label anymore? Or I want to change, you kind of changed music stylistically. Like, is it that music was changing around you, or did you change as an individual?
I think it was me more changing. I was changing. And I felt like I got to a point where it was so painful working in a major record company industry that it wasn't worth it. I felt like I had nothing to lose, really. And so it wasn't, it was brave, but it wasn't like, oh, I think I'm going to do this. It was like, I really need to do something now. Because it was difficult to try my ideas, even though I think, even though I always wrote my own songs and I was involved in the production, the environment was, it made me censor myself, I think, more than other people censoring me, straight on. I mean, there was definitely moments and things, situations where I didn't feel comfortable, but I was never... I never felt used, but I definitely felt that I could never spread my wings. I could never be as experimental as I wanted to be. And so starting the record company was a way of like building a structure around me that would protect me from the pressure I would put on myself, but also, of course, from a more commercial part of the industry that I didn't really, I couldn't mirror myself in it. I felt very weird, and the things that felt natural to me just weren't received. It wasn't that they were pushed down, they just kind of went over the heads of a lot of people that I was working with. And I couldn't explain what I wanted to do. I felt like I just had to do it. And again, I was lucky to work with someone that put this idea in my head. And I also, at the same time, started making music in a different way.
Because this was around the time you were sent a copy of Deep Cuts by The Knife.
Yeah. Yes, I got a CD in my mailbox, and it was The Knife's second album, exactly. And thank you, Adam. And so I was happy that they wanted to send me this album. I thought it was amazing music, and I just got in touch with them, kind of like I did with you, and said, do you want to work with me? And they were so supportive, very feminist way of working, very conscious way of working, and they were all independent, and they were doing it all by themselves, and we made a great song together, and I played it to the label that I was working with at the time, and they didn't like it. And that just kind of did it for me. I just felt like, I love this, and you don't like it at all. Like, how am I supposed to work with this? And the same guy who didn't like that song was actually the person who helped me start my label. So that's how it is. It's so contradictory. You think, you think the music industry was all bad, but it wasn't. It's just, for me, it was about finding the courage of really following my instinct. Yeah.
So this the Robyn album with Who's That Girl, and let's talk about Be Mine as well, because this was the first time for you working with Klaus, who's now a long-term and close collaborator. It was working with The Knife, It was kind of like, you've described it somewhere as like the time you found your collaborators and you found your sound with them and like really came into your own. How did you meet Klaus?
I don't remember. I mean, I remember the first time we met. I think it was an idea from my then manager. You know, you should meet with Klaus. We should see what happens. We met, and we decided to start working together. And it became a really close relationship, and still is. Klaus Åhlund is his last name. It's like the second band member in Robyn. No, it really is.
Because if he had a large role in the Robyn album, he had an even larger impact on the Body Talk records, because a lot of that was just you and him being very, very spontaneous and like just having fun as well. Yeah. Is Be Mine the first song you wrote together? I think you said it was.
I believe it is, yeah. It's a song, well, it was a song that Klaus brought to me, and we finished it together. And I remember feeling so excited, really so excited about being able to make music that I liked.
Well, this is really kind of Robyn as well. Robyn's gone into her archives and found us the demo, the original demo of the song. So a lot of you might know the finished version, but now we're going to play this demo of Be Mine. So that was the demo for Be Mine. That sounded so good. And that was originally written on guitar. Yeah. And you said, was it like the Kate Bush cloud busting influence?
Yeah.
You said you wanted to bring in strings.
Yes. I wanted to... Well, I mean, Klaus is a rock guy. Rock. And I'm not. And so... well, the only guitar that I've listened to maybe intensely has been Prince's guitar, and I think that's why I loved this song so much. It reminded me of something like that, but I was like, I can't do this guitar thing.
I feel like he's snuck it in on some songs since then.
Yes.
It was maybe like the first song you're like...
Yeah, no, it's like, exactly, too much, too soon. So we re-recorded it with strings, yeah. And it's just strings, bass, and drums, and vocals on the finished version.
I want to talk about the songwriting process as well, because it's for this song, Klaus may have brought a fairly complete song, and it's something that you've ended up writing together. I love the way you described writing Dancing on My Own, for example, where you were saying that the melody was just floating around for a while, like you just had this idea. How does that happen to you? Like, will you be walking down the street and the seeds of a melody come, or are you sleeping? Are you in the shower? Like, where do these ideas for songs come from?
Well, every song is different. Some of them you struggle with them for years. But some songs come as little presents, and they're rare, but some of them come together, like where everything kind of comes together. Usually when I write music, it starts with melody and rhythm, so it won't be actual words. It will just be like a rhythm, mostly, with some notes. And sometimes it's lyrics, sometimes it's just the word that I love. But with Dancing on My Own, it was one of those things where the melody and the rhythm and some of the words kind of came at the same time. And I think it was because to me, Be Mine and Dancing on My Own are a little bit connected. They don't sound the same, but they're connected in the chord structure and the way that the chorus has like two parts. And I think I'd been touring with the first album for a long time, and I had been marinating on this kind of language for a while, and Dancing on My Own kind of came out of that, I think. And so I had this idea that I brought with me to the studio with Patrick Berger, who I wrote Dancing on My Own with, and we started playing around with chords and synthesizers, and it all just kind of happened. I don't know how to explain it. It's close to magic sometimes when that hits you.
I mean, I read in another interview from around this time where you were saying that part of the emotional intensity that you wanted to get into your songs was that kind of emotional intensity that you have at 15, 16. So like these, when you really fall in love, you fall in love. When you're heartbroken, you're heartbroken. You can tell that from the songwriting as well.
Good.
Is part of that, I wondered, because also you were quite busy at 15, 16. Is this like, is part of this cathartic process, is like you're revisiting emotional spaces you maybe didn't get to visit the first time around?
Yeah. You mean the first time around with the first albums, or the first...
At that age?
At that age, yeah. I mean, who knows? The unconscious is so mysterious. But I think that after living a few years now, not that I'm old, but I'm getting older, I feel like when you look back at those... When I look back at like my teenage years or whatever, it might have been things that happened then or a little bit earlier, but it also might have been things that happened when I was super small. Like, I feel like there's so much inside of us, I think, that we don't have access to. And then when you're in a very extreme or desperate or sad situation, there are little messages that pop up, and sometimes you're able to catch them and make a song out of them. I've written a lot of sad songs, yeah. And
but do you...
sometimes people ask me, like, what happened to you? And I'm like, oh my God. But I think I'm a fan of when there's like light and dark at the same time. And when there's just happiness or just sadness, it just gets boring. Like, that's so predictable. And the magic to me is when there are lots of things going on at the same time. That's much more satisfying, and that's what I'm drawn to when I make music, I guess.
And do you feel it is like a cathartic process? Do you feel better after writing songs?
Yes, because you're able to turn something that might feel like you're holding in, or that you're censoring yourself, or somehow not giving or showing. You're able to make something good out of it, something positive, which is amazing. So that's really amazing. But I wouldn't call, well, maybe making music is a kind of a therapy, but I wouldn't call it that, because therapy to me is something very different, and much slower, and it's just like a way of being and a way of living that I just haven't been able to change or whatever. Yeah.
Well, I think I can speak for a lot of people in the room as well, with like all of the depth of emotion and the feeling that you put into your songs. It's so meaningful to people. Like, I think it really, like, those emotional ideas of dancing on your own, or You Will Never Be Mine, like, I think it really, it's not just universal, but it's like something that obviously connects to what happens in people's lives as well. Let's hear a little bit of another demo. This is quite exciting. So Robyn's given us the demo for Dancing on My Own. Can you explain... Can you explain to everyone what yogurt is?
Yes. So yogurt is a French word for a white kind of thing that you eat. No, I'm just kidding. It's a word that you taught me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yogurt is when you sing like made up English.
Gibberish.
Gibberish, yeah. Could be any language, but things that aren't real words, I guess. Yeah, so this is some yogurt.
The demo version with some yogurt. And towards the end of the chorus, just so you know, I'm going to crossfade into the finished version so you can kind of hear what ended up happening with the song. So this is the demo of Dancing on My Own. That's a little peek behind the curtain. So that was the demo for Dancing on My Own. Tell us about writing that with Patrick. What do you remember?
I remember Patrick, he's like in punk bands usually.
I'm sensing a theme here.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But he also loves synthesizers, and it's so gothy now that I hear it. Like, it's so, like, very sad. And yeah, I think we just brought out these synthesizers, and I wanted it to be really pounding, and he got it.
And so you'd already had that idea for a chorus in your head,
Yeah,
just around.
the chorus I had there.
And what would happen? Would you like say, I think I have this melody, and sing it to him? Like, would it sound like that?
I think some of it I sang to him. Some I didn't know if it was going to work. You know, some things you don't want to, like, you know, put it out there before you're sure of it, you know, when you first work with someone. But I had this, I keep dancing on my own. I had that. I knew I wanted it to finish like that. Something very definitive about the melody, and I always try to write a song that I feel like maybe Prince could like. And I think he could have liked, I keep dancing on.
For sure.
Maybe. So that's how I get myself in shape. I think about him. Yeah.
Well, it's I've also noticed you in the studio. There's a thing that Robyn does when there's a song we're working on that's quite good, that we know has got promise. You'll start singing A Love Bizarre by Sheila E. over the song. But it's like, you're like, shit, got the Robyn seal of approval. Okay, great.
Yeah.
What's it about that song as well?
I don't know. It's just something, it feels like it's a kind of melody that I feel is timeless. That it's not connected to a trend or a rhythm that's happening right there and then. It's something else, something that, I don't know how to describe it. It's like French fries, it's always going to be amazing, you know?
There we go. I think that's the perfect metaphor, actually.
Yeah.
So I think we can start teasing towards the next era of Robyn, because there's a lot of people in this room who are like, okay, we talked about the early albums, we talked about Robyn, we talked about Body Talk. The question is, what's coming next?
Yeah.
Or what has come next? Let's think about the projects that you've worked on between Body Talk and now. So a key one, I guess, because it was like, well, in a way, it was like your first band, the way you describe it, was La Bagatelle Magique, which was you, Christian Falk, and Marcus Jägerstad.
Yeah, exactly.
How did that come about?
Well, Christian Falk was a person that he worked on my first album. And Christian was this amazing person that, even though I was 16 years old when we worked on the first album, when I was in the studio with him, it was like we were equals. He took me very seriously. He gave me like all the space, and he took my ideas seriously. That's so rare. I don't know if you remember what it's like to be 16. I'm sure you do. But do you remember how people just wouldn't take you seriously? And he did, you know?
He seemed like quite like an unusual personality.
Yes.
He was just like a bit different from everyone else that you were hanging out with in Stockholm.
Yes, he was different. I've never known anyone like him. Sometimes you're lucky to meet those people. his frequency was so high, and it was always high, and he always kept his eyes on the important things. You know, he was very complicated, but he was also someone that would always inspire me to go back to the things that I thought was important with music. And he's also the person that played me a lot of my favorite music for the first time. And he had an amazing record collection, and he taught me so much about music. And so when I came out of the Body Talk albums, and I'd been making so much music, and I'd been touring so much, I was really exhausted. And he was one of the people that I started making music with again, just to feel good about music and not feel like it was a job. And we spent time, and we started working on a project together. It kind of just came together naturally. And Love is Free was one of the first things that we worked on. And this is how he worked. I mean, for me, he's probably one of the most important people in my life when it comes to music. And he was always digging through his record collection and always finding things to sample. I mean, he started as a bass player playing in a punk band, but then he also, got into, African music and house music, and he was like one of the first people that I heard play two-step, and this was like when he was like 45 years old. He loved hip-hop music. He made the sickest beats that you can imagine. And he was still doing it at the end of his life. And he dug up this really obscure thing called Artomatic that was released on a small hip-hop label here in the US in the 80s. And someone on that record, I don't remember his name, made this house song. And he found this little part in it, and he sampled it. And he started making Love is Free, and it became like a totally different thing, but still, like, that's how he worked. It was very, very inspiring to be around him.
Maybe this is a good opportunity to listen to a little bit of Love is Free. I think we have the video as well. Can we have the video, please? So that was Love is Free, which is Bagatelle Magique and Maluka in the video too.
Yes, and a wonderful video made by Sean, I think. I don't know if he's here, but I love this video, yeah.
Oh, I know that Robyn had a bit of a hard time drawing up a guest list with all of the New York collaborators that have been through your life as well, because the 90s house thing goes deep for you, like right back to working with Masters at Work on album 3, on
album
main thing,
2.
on album 2, yeah.
2 and 3 maybe. Oh, I have to, yeah, okay. We worked together. It was an amazing experience.
But that's like, that's New York legacy though, like working with like OG house heads.
Yeah.
And you can kind of start to hear those 90s influences coming back in Bagatelle Magique, and
yeah.
It's even something that I think you're being influenced by now, perhaps.
Yes. Yeah, it's true. But one thing I thought about, this is maybe off topic, but one thing I thought about when you were, I don't remember what we said, but yeah, about writing songs. One thing that is so amazing with music is that you can hear a song. Like when I was little, and I was hearing all this music, and I didn't have any idea where it came from. Like beginning of my teenage years, listening to all this club music that was in Europe at the time, actually in the charts, music that came from this place that I didn't even know anything about. But in some music, even though if you don't know anything about it, there's these little clues and messages, like someone's made something, and you recognize a feeling, and you recognize an energy, and you even, like with lyrics, you can understand what that person has gone through, even though you've never met them. It's so beautiful. And I remember coming here when I was 17 and going to, lucky enough to manage to catch 2 or 3 of the last body and soul clubs in the shelter, and just seeing where this music came from that I had been listening to all my life, but I just didn't know I didn't know anything about the culture. And I remember walking in and seeing all this baby powder on the floor and these kids sleeping with their headphones and waiting for some energy to come back so that they could keep dancing, and all ages, and so beautiful.
Well, the shelter, which now has monthly parties at Output, also started doing these late night after hours for smaller crowds in the city. And I got an email about it that I forwarded Robyn. And in a moment of madness, we were both thinking about going last night at 3:30 in the morning, which is when it starts. And then we were like, no.
Maybe not.
But it's nice to see that lineage is still there, like the shelter's still going, New York House is still going strong.
And all the people that used to go still turning up.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. So sadly, the Bagatelle Magique was a complicated writing, and it was a complicated project to finish because Christian got sick halfway through. And I think just because it's quite heavy, I would refer people to the Bagatelle Magique website, where you did a really great text with Lisa Milberg about how it was to complete the record and the feelings around Christian's death. But it's obviously a big shock, and these tsunamis that have happened in life fairly recently as well. Like, how have you coped with all of these kind of emotional roller coasters? Are there things that have helped you through that?
Yeah. Finishing the album finishing the EP that we did, even though Christian wasn't around anymore, was one of them. I had started Psychoanalysis in 2010 already, but it wasn't until 2014, around when Christian passed, and I went through a separation at the same time. And I was really searching and looking for new ways of making music, and that my therapy really started to take off, and I stayed in psychoanalysis for about 7 years. I think things happen in life, big things happen, and there's nothing good about people getting sick and dying. I mean, there's no romantic way of looking at it. But I still feel privileged to have been through that experience, and it helped me to appreciate life a lot more.
Because I think in the text for the Bagatelle Magique project, you were saying that in some ways you had to let the project breathe so that when it did finish, it still maintained the joyous energy that all of you wanted it to have. Like, it was meant to feel like this explosive, living, breathing thing.
Totally.
What was your motivation behind doing the psychoanalysis? Like, you knew that it was going to be several years of your life and kind of all-consuming. It was like 3 days a week. Sometimes I would Robyn would be on FaceTime and I'd be like, oh, okay, let me leave the room. It's just intense. It was something that you had to commit to fully, all your energy and emotionally as well. How do you feel also coming out the other side of that, the process?
Amazing. So amazing to have had one totally healthy relationship. I think that's what psychoanalysis is. You do it for 5 years minimum, maybe longer. Some people do it all their lives, but I think that's what it is. You have one relationship where you try all your other relationships, and it's someone that stays around and follows it through with you. And it's 3 to 4 times a week. And yeah, it kept me in Sweden for a long time. Sometimes, yes, on Skype from LA. But real commitment, almost like an education, I think. Yeah.
You talked about how you feel like it's given you, not permission, but it's given you a way to embrace other sides of yourself, like softness, for example. Do you think that's something that we might hear in new music, or how are you embracing that softness in your work?
No, you're so right. The whole process of making this album has been very, very different from anything I've done before.
There's an album?
Yes. It's not... It's not finished yet, but it's almost there, and yeah, I felt very raw when I started making this album. No filters, and I started it on my own in my studio, listening to music that I love, dancing and making beats. And that's how I started, and I wanted to start on my own before I started collaborating this time, because I had some things that I wanted to try. And I love to collaborate. It's like one of the things that I always done and that I always will do, but I wanted to just flesh it out a little bit on my own before I brought other people into the process. And so it was an amazing period for me. Like, if you would have asked me then, I would have probably said something different. But looking back at it, it's like one of those, yeah, I think I'm always going to look back at that period and feel happy that I was in that space. And just got in touch with, I guess, a sensuality and a softness that I've wanted to explore.
I actually wanted to ask about, in terms of like your own writing process and how you interact. Like, you're saying this is the first time that maybe you had your own tools, you had Logic and you had your drum machine and you had synths, and you were really starting the songwriting process entirely alone. And this kind of ties into the work that you do with your Tekla Festival as well, which we should maybe touch on. But do you think your career would look different if you'd have had access to the tools that people do now in terms of music making? Like, if you were 16 and you had a laptop with Ableton and all the tools and you could sample stuff off YouTube, do you think you would be making music differently, or do you think your career would look different?
For sure. I mean, I think your musical taste and your identity is always there, but technology helps you to bring it out. And the big thing, I think, for a lot of people that aren't exposed to technology early on in their careers or their lives, you have this unhealthy respect for it. And you think that it's difficult, or you might not even like it in the beginning because it's not so intuitive. And a part of this break that I had was also, going more into that aspect and learning more about the stuff that I always had been using a little bit, but really didn't know. And it helped me to be much more detailed and specific about what I wanted to do. And that's also what Tekla is about. Should I talk about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, do you want to explain what Tekla is?
Yes.
Well, I can give you a little bit of praise and props here. We need to keep lifting the star. Keep lifting. Robyn was actually awarded the KTH Great Prize in 2013, which honors a person who, through epoch-making discoveries and creation of new values, and by ingenious applications of findings gained on practical aspects of life, promotes Sweden's continued material progress. Good job. And so you took that prize money and you created the Tekla Festival.
Yes. So when you receive that prize, you're asked to do a seminar for the students of the university, and I just really didn't feel up for it. Like, what am I supposed to tell you? Like, oh, this is how you edit this vocal in Logic. Like, I felt not worthy. So I spoke to a very intelligent friend of mine, Lina Thomsgård, and she was like, I heard about this thing, this thing that the Swedish government is doing. They're trying to get more girls into the technological university in Stockholm. They've asked the school to work on this, and maybe we can help them. So we decided to start this festival, which is a one-day festival each year for used to be 250, now it's 400 girls that just get to come and listen to music and do workshops and learn how to play instruments or have bands or like work in DAVs, like music programs, but also like program 3D printing, work with AI. It's all, or even STEM science, so chemistry, physics, all that. Just to kind of break down this barrier of fear and not having anyone to mirror you as a girl. And it's become something really great that I'm really proud of.
And when will the next festival be?
We're taking a break this year to reevaluate some of the things that we've been trying for the last 3 years. We're doing an event in Stockholm in April, but we're going to relaunch it again next year. Maybe make it a little bit bigger, but it's really important to keep the quality of it. So it's more about focusing actually on getting more girls into this education, because technology is, like we all know, something so influential, and it's important that we all get to decide what it's going to do.
And can you explain, this was one part of the KTH thing that confused me a little bit. They built a robot of you.
Yeah.
Was that part of the prize, or that was just a thing they were doing anyway? Or is this something that happens in Sweden when you get sufficiently famous?
Right. That was the prize. But they had an idea. They had an idea of making a robot and naming it after me. And I was like, cool, do it. Do it.
Did you meet the robot?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wasn't a lot of interaction, no. No AI yet.
You didn't get its
at
email?
Least there.
Did you stay in touch?
I was interested in the dance moves.
Because there is a question in the Q&A about robot voices. Was this the robot doing the... No.
The what?
The robot voices on your record.
Oh, right. No, that's Klaus with his... No, it's actually me, but it's just voice transformers and different shit that we like.
There is a technical question coming about that, so I'll move on for now.
There's a really good voice transformer in Logic, by the way. You should find it. It's connected. I don't know what it's called, but like in the sidebar there with the channels, you can find it as an already existing setting, and it's great.
Who uses Logic in the room? Okay. Oh. Well, it was more, I was going to say, you 3 people should talk to Robyn afterwards about this. But I'm also interested in that when you were working on new music, you showed me like the equipment that you use, and you used like a Linn drum as well, which I think is kind of interesting because it ties you into the Prince lineage and Jam and Lewis, and I wanted to talk to you about some of the more unexpected collaborations that people might not even know have happened in these intervening years. So you have a track with Nena, you did, so that kind of brings it full circle now, Out the Back.
Yeah.
How was that working with Nena?
A dream come true. This album the first video that we saw was from an album called Raw Like Sushi. And it came out when I was 10 years old, and it was one of my first favorite albums. She always inspired me so much. And I've known her a little bit over the years, but we've never worked together. It was like a dream come true.
She grew up in Stockholm.
She grew up in Stockholm. Her mother's Swedish. Her dad is from Africa, and I don't know which country. But she grew up with... she grew up in America and in the UK. But she also had this Swedishness. I knew she was Swedish, and I was like, oh my God, this cool, amazing woman is Swedish. There was nothing like her when I was growing up.
Because you were talking about how, also the Body Talk record is when rapping really gets involved in your music making in a big way.
Yeah.
And you've told me about Nena being an influence and Missy Elliott being an influence as well.
Yes, totally, and Salt and Pepper. Yeah, I don't know how to explain it. It just gave me so much courage and life to watch them and hear them, and the power in the voices, all of them in their different ways. But I think it's a kind of female rap that is just based on like energy and happiness and joy, and like it's really inspiring to me, like really important.
So you came full circle to working with Nena.
Yeah.
Then you did a collaboration with Todd Rundgren recently.
Yes. Yeah.
That's kind of out of left field as well.
Yes.
How was that?
Amazing. That was because of you.
I don't think so.
Yeah, because Adam makes amazing music, and one of the things that you and I have been working on is something that had to do with him.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah,
true. Right.
and so we had to get in touch with him, and so therefore he knew that I liked his music, and then he just sent me the song that he wanted me to record. I mean, I didn't write anything on that. He was just like, "Do you want to sing this?" I was like, "Yes." Yeah.
And then I threw it out there because I think it's fun, and I'd like to hear you talk about it. We also went to meet Jam and Lewis.
Yes.
That's pretty wild.
It's
I would love to hear you singing on Jam and Lewis.
me too. We'll make it happen, maybe.
Maybe.
If you're watching, Jimmy and Terry.
Jimmy and Terry.
Let's finish those songs. Yeah.
But
Yeah, we have some stuff with them that we've been working on. It was an honor to be in their presence.
I mean, I remember as well Robyn saying, "Guys, could you get the synthesizers that you used with Janet Jackson, maybe?" And Terry Lewis being like, "Okay, all right, I'll go." And he drives 2 hours and comes back with them. But then as soon as we plugged them in,
they were like in school like they were so happy and so they were just playful.
Yeah. And just imagine like Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis playing "What Have You Done For Me Lately" in front of you on keyboards, and you're like, "Is that the same synth?" As he's like, "Yeah." What about your work with Jala? Because I feel like Jala's been an important influence on you. It's like a two-way street with your collaborations as well.
Jala is one of my favorite artists ever, of all time and genres. She's signed to Konnichiwa Records, not continuously, but for every album, we talk about, maybe releasing it, and she's working on something new, and I think I will be releasing that album as well. She's so complex, and she has this amazing voice, like a Whitney Houston voice, but she is using it in a very unorthodox way. She's so brave, and really bending everyone's perception of what an artist can be.
Do you think that's part of your ongoing place in the music industry, is to like find talented people and work with them? And
yeah,
I mean, I feel like I see you work with so many people in so many different genres as well, which is not everyone can do that. Not everyone has that range, to use a phrase from the internet.
Thank you. That's very sweet coming from you. But yeah, I think you're right. I think one of the most amazing things about making music is that you can be in collaborations with other people. And there's this structure around it where you can just be free and get to know each other.
I'd like to bring it back to you and your work. This solitary work that you described. Do you think it's time to play this little thing that we thought about playing?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's another demo version. Maybe we should just play it and explain what it is afterwards. Or do you want to explain a little bit first?
No, let's just play it.
Okay. So this is something you might recognize in a raw and like a very solo Robyn form. It's a very, very early demo.
Hashtag release honey, goddammit. That's what it sounded like in the beginning. Now it sounds different.
The danger of you saying hashtag release honey damn it is it shows that fans saying that is working.
Is it really? Is it really?
Yeah. Oh no, it's true because you haven't released it.
No.
So.
Not yet.
So I don't know if the super fans in the audience recognize that, but that was Honey, a demo of, which you first exposed to the world discreetly through an episode of Girls, just a small TV show that not very many people watch.
Yeah. You know when you get excited about new music, and then I got a question from Lena Dunham about, you know, if I had anything that she could play in the show, because Dancing on My Own had a moment in the first season, in an amazing part of it, the third episode. And yeah, I was just really flattered, and I just sent her some demos, and that's what she picked. And then I finished a version for her that I wasn't happy with. But people seem to like it. So it's been out there for a while.
And just to
and
clarify,
I just thought I would play it to you guys because you're here. Thank you.
just to clarify, when you say that you didn't like it, it's more, this is just your perfectionism, is that...
Totally. Definitely, yes. It's a good version. I'm not saying you shouldn't like it. Thank you. Yeah, exactly. No, it's more like, I don't know. Sometimes it just becomes more important than with other songs. This was one of those songs where it's just been important to get it to a place where I feel like I made it into what I wanted it to be. That's maybe a better way of saying it. I didn't mean to say that you liking it is a bad thing at all.
I don't think anyone took it that way.
Well, thank you for pointing that out to me.
Well, it's more this idea that I think for you, you just have somewhere really ambitious you want to go, and anything along that journey that's not quite there is not far enough or not sufficiently spectacular. Because also it's nice, this note that you sent me about your new processes, kind of like making new music. You said, I just need downtime to space out in the studio, to sketch out some of the production ideas before I take them to anyone else. I spent a whole year just working on finding an energy that I think I'm describing in the song Honey, feeling inspired, playful, sensual. So it's like, I love that idea that you just have to take time to find the right energy for the song.
Yes. It's so right. I mean, I think what you're catching on to also is, or what you're feeling is this thing of like how sensitive it is, you know, to find something that is really what you want it to be and that feels honest and honest without being pretentious or whatever, like real and not filtered. And that's just not something that I think I can do anymore under pressure. It's like, it's really counterintuitive. You think, or I used to think that the more you push, the better it gets. But I think with this album, I've gone more back into this, like the softer I get, the more it happens. And the more colors and the more dynamic a song gets. And that means, for me, it meant just shutting down for a while and being very sparse with my impressions, or like just being very sensitive to what I needed.
Yeah, it's a bit like the softer you sing on a song, the more powerful it can be, despite the fact that you're actually singing quieter and like more intimately.
Exactly.
I want to give the audience a little treat as we're coming to the closing stages of this conversation, just because not everyone will know this because they don't know what time you were born. But I wanted to throw out this little Easter egg for everyone. Robyn has a sun in Gemini and a moon in Capricorn. I bet you didn't know that. There's like two people in the audience like, yes, I knew that. And I found that really interesting because I'm only recently coming to astrology, and I read all this stuff and I was like, oh, this is very you. Yeah.
Amazing.
It's all good.
How good are you? I can't believe that you've done this.
We did look at some of this together, and you were like,
but still.
well, no, because it said short description for Sun in Gemini. She can express herself easily and learns quickly. She's welcoming and gentle. She likes travel and intellectual work. And the weaknesses were a changeable and diffuse nature, wastes energy by doing too many things, lacks persistence in achieving set goals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Moon in Capricorn, calm, cool, and collected, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. It also says, truth is they can have plenty of mood swings and some dark emotions now and again.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. We are coming to a point in this Robyn chronology where it's almost impossible to say much more without giving too much away, which I know is frustrating for the fans in the audience, but trust me, there's so much exciting stuff coming on the way. I wanted to wrap up by asking some questions from members of the audience. We weren't going to be able to get microphones out to people, so this is a question from Bill from New Jersey. Oh, hi, Bill. Well, now I should hand it to you, but I'll just remind you what you said. Bill said, I was lucky enough to see your show when you headlined Radio Music City Hall, as well as when you opened for Katy Perry at the arena in New Jersey. I'm wondering what you took away or learned from touring with Katy and that huge production. Does doing something on a huge scale like that interest you at all?
Wow. I think it's so impressive to watch those big productions. It is so much work. I mean, just putting together a show of my size, I think it's a huge task. So I admire the like the strength of putting that together, but it's not what I want to do. Not at least right now. I mean, I haven't been touring for like 6 years. I'm just getting back into it. I mean, I toured a little bit 2 years ago, but no, I think for me, watching a big production like that makes me feel like I'm in a place where I want to be. I'm in the right space for me. Thank you.
And again, just to clarify, that doesn't mean there's no touring coming. There are.
Oh, yeah, there's touring. There's touring. Yeah, there's touring.
Another question from Russell. Russell Eli. Okay, Russell's just shy. As an electronic producer who is highly influenced by the production work in Body Talk, as well as the self-titled record, I can't help but notice cohesive and distinct quality to the timbre of electronic synths and beats, as well as all the genius robotic-like vocals and harmonies. How involved do you get with the mixing, programming, engineering while you're in the studio? Because your tracks are pure ear candy, especially in a high-quality pair of headphones.
Oh. So which was the two albums that he mentioned?
Robyn and Body Talk.
Body Talk, okay. Well, a lot of that is Claes. He's a genius with just making things sound beautiful. But the one thing I think we share is like the love of rhythm, both in lyrics and in beats. And we do a lot of that together. A lot of it is him and me sitting next to him and then talking about it or trying stuff. But I program some stuff as well. And especially on this new album, I've programmed things.
You edit a lot of your own vocals as well.
Yeah, I edit a lot of my vocals. I mean, Claes does that too. It's hard to talk about this. Like, I don't, because I really don't see myself as a producer. It's very hard work to be a producer, but I do produce.
Yeah, you do.
I do. Yeah, I do produce, and I do move little things around in the logic window and like work with samples and.
When he's talking about like automation and mixing, like I've seen you do all of that for your vocals as well.
Yeah, totally. No, I get into it when a lot of the different parts of it, and then a lot of it I leave to people that do it better than me too. But it's a collaboration of like discussing it and bringing things out that I think is important. Or, I mean, now I'm talking about these two albums. On this new album, it's been much more production work from my end, but still in collaboration with other producers. And some of it, of course, leaving to the people that I worked with totally. But I think the rhythms is like really me and Klaus together, like especially with the drums and the robot voices. It's kind of what brought us together, the love of rhythm. Yeah.
Well, like the Honey demo, for example, like that rhythmic idea is all yours. Like
Yeah.
what has become Honey was all based on a concept of rhythm and repetition that you were really interested in.
Yeah. I think something that comes from listening to all that club music that I've been listening to, but also listen to, Michael and Janet and Prince, who base their whole way of singing on rhythm. Yeah, it's what gets me going.
Because, you told me that maybe we would tell people some of the things that you've been listening to as well, because I think you can kind of hear these influences coming through. The DJ Koze, for example.
Yeah.
You could read these books as well if people want to know.
Oh yeah. I've been reading the books by Yuval Noah Harari, so Sapiens and Homo Deus. I've been reading an amazing book by Peter Cornell, but it's in Swedish, so maybe it won't.
There were 3 Swedes.
Exactly. It's called Saker, which means things, and it's about art history and objects and how objects change with like a varied mental health or psychedelic experience, but also I don't know how to explain it. Read the book; it's amazing. So I've been listening to Prince and David Bowie and Kate Bush, but I always listen to them. And then, of course, DJ Koze, who I think made one of the best club tracks of like the last, I don't know, decade or something. It's called Ecstasy. It was released in 2015 and it kind of changed my life.
Maybe they'll play it tonight at the after party.
Yeah, maybe. Well, the person who goes will see. And what else did I write?
Well, you talked about Pikes, the clubbing experience.
Oh yeah, Pikes. Everyone's booking shows there now, so I won't try to keep it a secret because it's not a secret anymore. But it's an amazing place in Ibiza, and the genius DJ Harvey has a night there in the summers, and that's been a place that I've been visiting and feeling mega inspired. But also the Michael Jackson demos of the Thriller album and the Off the Wall album. I don't know if you've listened to them, but yeah, listen to them. They're amazing. Yeah, those are some of the things I've been doing.
Well, I think it ties into, because people are curious about the things that inspire you and your influences. This is the last question from Andrew Matson. Andrew here?
Hi.
Hi, Andrew. Wanted to know, who are some of your favorite dancers and can I find them on YouTube?
Oh, my favorite dancers?
Mm-hmm.
Well, my all-time favorite dancer is Rosie Perez. I think Fatima Robinson is an amazing dancer. There's so many. Jermaine Spivey, who came on tour with me 2 years ago, is one of the most amazing contemporary dancers I've ever seen. My brother is great.
He's an incredible dancer.
Who else?
You work a lot with Maria as well.
Yes, Desaida, who's my long-time friend and amazing choreographer and collaborator. Definitely inspired me so much.
Can you talk about that, the choreography for the Call Your Girlfriend video?
Yes. Yes. Okay, so
But we can also move the table out of the way.
yeah.
You didn't pay enough for that. I'm sorry. Almost enough.
Thank you for getting me out of that. Okay, so the video for Call Your Girlfriend happened way, way, way later than it should have happened. Like months later. The song had been out for, a couple of months maybe, or 3 months. And me and Max, the love of my life, started thinking about how to make a video for it. And he had this idea about just being in a space and dancing. And me and Maria started working on it. Desaida, she has 2 names, but we just started working on it. And I think always when me and Desaida works, it starts with just what happens or what comes naturally when we're improvising. And I'm not a well-trained dancer, but I love to dance. And I think what informs me the most is clubbing. That's what it all comes from. And what happens to a person when you start letting go of and judging your behavior, Oh my God, Prince is my favorite dancer. Yeah, so we just did that. And it was like, we did it in like a week. I just did what felt good, and she coached me. And we shot it with a good DOP, an amazing light designer. And I feel like it inspired people, which I'm really happy about, to dance and move their bodies in a way that feels good to them. Lots of people have done that before, but the video had a moment that I'm proud of.
Do you ever go back and watch these videos? Like, when was the last time you saw it?
I haven't watched the Call Your Girlfriend video in a long time. But I think I'm going to have to, because I'm going to go back on tour soon, so... I have to get my stuff together.
Well, I've won as a fan. I can't wait for new music, new tour, for the new choreography. I think everyone in this room would join me in thanking you so much for coming out to sing that. Robyn!
Thank you so much. Thank you, Adam.